Hello Admirals and welcome to my channel where I talk to you about Battlefleet Gothic, the space fleet game based in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. So in this particular Starter Fleet episode I'm going to be talking to you about the poster child of the Warhammer 40,000 universe, the Space Marines. The Adeptus Astartes have a fleet in Battlefleet Gothic because they have to, right? They are literally the poster children of this particular fandom. Space Marines are everywhere, and they have a fleet. In Battlefleet Gothic, the individual chapters don't have their own sets of rules like they do in Warhammer 40,000. The fleet is a generic Space Marine fleet, so it doesn't matter if it's Ultramarines or Salamanders or Imperial Fists, or one of the lesser known chapters like Mantis Warriors or Mentors, or the ones I'm painting at the moment, Howling Griffins. They're all the same under Battlefleet Gothic. Their ships operate the same way, they're just painted differently. There are a set of fan-made rules, which is set in the Horus Heresy in 30k, which is called Battlefleet Heresy, which provides more in-depth look at the various different legions and provides each legion in the Horus Heresy their own set of kind of specific rules. So if you really are interested in sort of those trying to drill down into like legion specific fleets, then have a look at Battlefleet Heresy. It is fan made, but pretty much based on Battlefleet Gothic. So yeah, highly recommend checking that out if you want some marine fleet action. But the standard original rule set that came out in Armada, so the yellow book that you'll see in some of my videos. That's where the original Space Marine fleet list and fleet rules were. And then in 2010, a compendium and FAQ occurred, which did improve the viability and all that with the Space Marine fleet. It certainly improved their staying power, specifically around one of them, literally their main ship, called a strike cruiser. So in this one I'm going to talk a little bit about a very simple, I'm going to give you one starter fleet here, which kind of gives you a basis for everything, and again 1500 points give or take, and then I'll just mention a few other options that you could throw in, certainly ones that I do in my Space Marine fleets. So yeah, let's get cracking into it. So this is one of my Space Marine fleets. This is for my homebrew chapter, which is called the Astral Lions. I have quite a large fleet, and my own Space Marine 40k army is the Astral Lions. You can check out their lore if you want on my page and all that sort of stuff, and on the website. But essentially, this has a battle barge, 4 strike cruisers, and a set of escorts, which gives you a little bit of variability. The thing with the Space Marine fleet is there isn't a lot of variability to it. You have essentially strike cruisers and a battleship and a few escorts, and that's realistically it. If you have a lot of options in the Chaos and Imperial fleet lists, you have a very little options in the Space Marine one, and that's predominantly because of lore, based and a lot of rules in it, but predominantly lore based. They're supposed to come in, Space Marines, invade a planet, bombard it, and then leave. Then they're not designed to try and have prolonged fleet engagements in the lore. But this is kind of a standard sort of 1500 point. I think this with a Master of the Fleet and a reroll gets you at about 1495 in points. So you have your big battleship, which is the battle barge here, which can put out quite a good amount of weaponry. You have your strike cruisers and your escorts, like I said. You have a variety of escorts. You have some weapons battery ones, some torpedoes, and crucially you have some lances, and I'll explain why that's crucial in a moment. So the actual overall Space Marine fleet has some really good things attached to it. The capital ships themselves have the best armor value you can get, which is 6, and all around as well. So if you cast your mind back to things like the Orcs, they have a 6 armor prow, 5 on the side and 4 in the rear, but they are 6 everywhere. So they're really hard to hit, really well armored with weapons batteries. So that armor 6 really does good things. But it is circumvented by that lance. So they don't like lance fleets a lot. So Eldar can put in a lot of firepower into Space Marines. But that armor prow does do a lot of work. Additionally, they're quite quick. The strike cruisers can move faster than 25 centimeters. They're faster than their Imperial counterparts. And they can also turn at 90 degrees, not 45 like other cruisers, which makes them actually quite quick. You'd be very surprised by how quick they can actually be. And what the aim of these is, I mentioned bombardment cannons. So they have a specific weapon attributed to Space Marines called the bombardment cannon, which is essentially a souped-up weapons battery. It hits on 4s but uses the gunnery table from the rules videos that I showed you. And they can all have that, all the capital ships. And you can change and upgrade them as you wish with the strike cruisers, which is great. You can have more Thunderhawks, or you can have more bombardment cannons and that sort of thing. So they are what they excel at is closing quickly, which they really want to do. They want to close quickly. So they have short-range weapons. Those bombardment cannons are only 30 centimeters. So they want to close quickly, hit hard with the bombardment cannons, and also do hit-and-run attacks with those Thunderhawks that they have. They cause hit-and-run attacks, different to bombers. But they do hit-and-run attacks and cause critical hits to their opposing fleet. And also boarding. Space Marines are very, very good at boarding as well. As I said, lances, they do have a lack of lances. And again, that's kind of lore, kind of specific. Lances are designed for fleet combat. In the lore, Space Marines weren't designed for space combat. They're designed to get in, strike, as in strike cruiser, and get out again, not prolonged engagements in space. So they don't have lancers in their fleet, apart from a few escorts, which are the Novas here. So it's always good to, I think, to have a couple of lancers floating around in your fleet just in case you need them. Up to you, but they're the limited access to lancers that they have. So useful to have floating around in your fleet, in my view. What was good about the 2010 compendium compared to Armada was that it allowed you to purchase an extra shield for your strike cruisers. And why that was important is because they only have 6 hit points. So they have better armor, but less hit points. So with only that one shield originally in the original Armada book, it was actually not difficult to cripple strike cruisers, which made them a little bit unviable, which then kind of kills the rest of the fleet. You have to have strike cruisers realistically to make the fleet work. So being able to buy an extra shield just adds that extra level of survivability to the strike cruisers, and I think that was one of the best outcomes from any of the rules upgrades or changes in the FAQ and compendium and all that they did in 2010. It made this fleet very useful and more survivable. So the aim of this fleet, like I said, you have your 4 strike cruisers. Your battle barge is your big ponderous battleship that's going forward, and it can do some serious damage as well. It can put out quite a lot of ordnance in the Thunderhawks, and can also put out a lot of weapons batteries and bombardment cannons as well. It is expensive, which is one of the major drawbacks of the battle barge. It's 400 points or more in some cases. And then you have your 4 strike cruisers, which will be your workhorse. So they'll be wanting to get forward, like I said, close, hit hard, maybe board. I also like a suggestion for them is to squadron them into 2 and 2 strike cruisers each. That can really up the rate at which you strip other fleets off their shields and hit hard. And then you use your escorts to kind of protect. You use your torpedo boats to do what torpedo does best, and pester and all that, which is great. The Gladiuses are a weapons patron, and they're quite good as well. And they're quite tanky as well. These ships are pretty tanky as well. And then you have a couple of lancers with the Novas to, again, just add a little bit of firepower and to take some pressure off your strike cruisers, mainly doing it. So 1,500 point fleet. And you really want to try and keep these guys alive and use them to close quickly, either board, hit hard, maybe hit hard with one set and then board with the next, that sort of thing. So that's kind of the aim of the game with Space Marines, and it's kind of a general starter fleet that gives you a good mix of everything.
Now, a little alternative to that is taking out the battle barge and all that, and including up to 6 strike cruisers. So this is my Ultramarines strike cruisers here. These are from Vanguard Minis. These are my proxy strike cruisers for that fleet. Done in the 4th Company, because the 4th Company colours have the Master of the Fleet for Ultramarines, if you didn't know. But 6 strike cruisers, some squadron together, some lone operative, can be quite a powerful little fleet. And if I'm not mistaken, I think 6 strike cruiser fleet was used in one of the most recent Adepticon Battlefleet Gothic tournaments to win that tournament. Got a lot of firepower, all have the extra shield, and what you can also do, which I didn't mention in the previous fleet, is you can swap out bombardment cannons for torpedoes and things like that as well. So there are some options that you can mix in here to up your ordnance. You do lose out on your bombardment cannon, but you can increase that ordnance, which is really, really very useful for this fleet. So 6 strike cruisers, along with then adding in some escorts where you need to, and rerolls, is quite a powerful fleet and quite a fast fleet for them. So these guys are strike cruisers are a pretty fun little ship, and highly recommend giving 6 strike cruisers a go in a 1500 point fleet, and then you make up the rest with escorts, etc., etc. And finally, something else that the Space Marines can do is they can take some reserve ships as well. So if you want to try and get in other cruisers from a Chaos list or an Imperial fleet list, you can do that. You can add in escorts, things like swords and firestorms as well. So you don't have to always play with the dedicated Space Marine ships. And it's always good to kind of maybe have a think about if you want to add in maybe one of these different fleet ships. The drawback is that there are some negatives to it on leadership and things like that. And finally, I have mentioned it a couple of times about Thunderhawks. Don't underestimate Thunderhawks. They are one of the most powerful things in the Space Marine fleet. And the reason why that is because they cause critical damage to the opposing fleet when they hit. So they're different to bombers and fighters and things like that. They're also resilient, so they can stay in play even if they're hit on a rolls of 4, I believe, from memory. So they can be you can be aggressive with them, they can remain in play, and by putting them and hitting against opponents, you can almost shut down entire fleets and ships. I remember one particular game against my mate BFG Noob where I think I used 4 or 5 strike cruisers in a fleet, pumping out Thunderhawks, and it basically shut down the entire enemy because the critical hits prevent damaged starboard weaponry, prow, dorsal, everything, and basically stopped that fleet from firing back at me. So it really does allow you then to close on the enemy unhurt, and then really then you can hit them very hard with your bombardment cannons or board and things like that. So the Thunderhawk is an incredibly useful thing to softening up the enemy and really preventing them from doing damage on you while you try and attempt to close.
And that's kind of about it for Space Marines Admirals. They're fast, they're maneuverable, they've got great armor. The aim of the game is to soften your opponent up with Thunderhawks and torpedoes, get in close as quickly as possible and hit really hard with those bombardment cannons, and then potentially follow up with boarding and hit and run teleport attacks and things like that, which I always forget to do. Don't be like me, always remember your teleport attacks when you can. They are a little bit susceptible to lances. They don't have lances back, so be wary of that if you're going to be a Space Marine Admiral. And I highly recommend you take as many Space Marine strike cruisers as you possibly can in a fleet. That's probably the most competitive, if you really want, for want of a better word, that you can be. They are great, and always, without fail, put the extra shield on the strike cruiser. It will dramatically increase their survivability. And give mixing and matching a go. I personally like to just keep the bombardment cannons and Thunderhawks going, but there are plenty of people who have great success with torpedoes on their strike cruisers and things like that. But personally, I like to kind of maintain the Thunderhawk bombardment cannon strategy. It's a great one. It's worked for me, to be honest. And like I said in the video, it's worked for other admirals in tournaments and things like that. So they're a great fleet. They do suffer a little bit for some drawbacks, especially with lances, like I said. But they're a fun fleet to use, and they have options as well. You can also, as part of their boarding, give them Terminators, which improves their boarding value as well. So keep an eye out for that too. If the more generic Space Marine fleet, which is in BFG, isn't kind of flavoursome enough to you, then certainly have a look at Battlefleet Heresy, which is, like I said, fan-made, but goes into a lot more detail on the specific legions in 30k and gives them character ships and that sort of thing. It's based on the normal rule set for BFG, so that's all good and sweet. So if you know normal BFG and you've had a look and how to play videos on that, then you're already onto a winner with it. But the guys there have made a great rule set, and it's good fun to play with all the different legions and even some characters as admirals and things like that represented. So yeah, check it out. And if there's interest in it, I can always do a little video on that if people are interested too. But yeah, that's it for Space Marines. A little starter fleet will be coming next, 15 points. Let me know in the comments if you have any other sort of strategies for Space Marines that you've played, or maybe you've given all escort kind of standard fleets a go and you'd be interested in that, or maybe you've gone reserves, or maybe you've put Grey Knights or things like that together. But let me know in the comments. I'd be interested to know your fleet tactics. Should we go back to Xenos next? I think we'll go back to Xenos next. Maybe Tau. Everyone keeps asking me for Tau, so maybe we'll do Tau next. Until then, thanks very much, Admirals. I'll see you again in the next video.